In today's video, we're taking a look at the Scandinavian defense, one of the strongest chess openings for black against the move of e4. And when you play the Scandinavian, you're really fighting for the center in a direct fashion, right? Immediately attacking the pawn on e4. Against the move e4, there's only two moves here for black that are good, at least, that immediately put pressure on this pawn. Okay, now, no, I'm not counting the Durrës Gambit. Okay, this is terrible, but you can play the Alekhine's Defense or the Scandinavian defense and put immediate pressure on that pawn on e4. Now, this video is really meant to be kind of a guide for the Scandinavian defense, meaning we're not going to be going super in-depth on any of the lines or variations in terms of the theory, but this video is really meant to be the beginning of a new series on the Scandinavian defense, and this video can be your reference point to see what different options you have as a Scandinavian defense player. Okay, so there's a lot of different ways that you can take it from here. Okay, the moment you play d5, it's not like, okay, you only have one choice every move. Okay, there's a lot of different ways that you could play this. And, you know, as you play the Scandinavian defense over time, you can adapt your own style with it. Now, it's worth mentioning as well, E4 players generally hate playing against the Scandinavian defense. Okay, a lot of my private students, when we first meet, will tell me that they can't stand the Scandinavian defense and it drives them crazy. So, you know, a lot of my work lately has been trying to find ways that white can get a solid game against the Scandinavian defense while also avoiding some theory. And by doing that, I'm you know, really recommending this move knight c3 for white, and that's what I've been playing as white lately, and it's been bringing me some really good success. But all that to say, yeah, I mean, the Scandinavian defense is a very annoying chess opening for e4 players to deal with. Okay, and I would also say that e4 players in general, they don't generally don't study too much for the Scandinavian defense because they don't know how to. Okay, there's not a bunch, or at least seemingly at the start, it doesn't seem like there's a bunch of really fun options for white on how to play against it. But we're going to be going over, okay, from the black perspective, what can white play here? And yeah, how can we as black proceed as well? By the way, in terms of my private lessons, that's what I do full time, right? I do this YouTube channel. I'm doing courses. I'm, by the way, Czech Pirc course coming soon. And I also do private chess lessons. So if you're interested in taking your game to the next level, I'll leave a link down below. And yeah, I'm excited about the possibility of helping you gain ELO, improve at chess, and yeah, just be in a different place than when you started off. So okay, we have this move d5. Now, there's a bunch of moves that white can play here, but most of the time you see e takes d5. So we're going to start with this. How do we respond against e takes d5, right? And, you know, in this case, most players seem to go with queen takes d5. Okay, now, growing up, I played knight f6, which is considered the modern variation. And by doing that, we're just, you know, using the knight to attack the pawn. First off, white can save their pawn by playing c4. We're going to play c6. White can take. White is up a pawn, but I love this game for black. Stockfish likes it for black. The stats point towards black having a really nice game here. And notice what we're doing here. White played e4 and they played c4. By doing that, by definition, d4 is weak. We already have two pieces attacking it. White has 0. You wanna try to play knight f3 to put a little bit more pressure on that? Well, guess what? We're playing e5. We have a great grip with our knight, our pawn, and our queen, all aimed towards that square. It's going to be very difficult for white to play d4. In fact, it's going to be impossible for them to play that without losing a pawn. And, you know, let's say we see something like d3. There's a lot of ways you can play this. Stockfish likes this move e4. Growing up the way I did it, I just played bishop c5. I castled, right? Bishop f5. And I just started putting a bunch of pressure on that d3 pawn, that backwards d3 pawn. It's not going to be easy for white to hold on to it. But okay, I mean, let's say something like bishop e3 is played. We can take. We can play a move like knight g4, right? Threaten the pawn. If a move like e4, we can play queen b6 with check. If a move like queen d2, guess what? Queen b6. This pawn is very weak. You know, white can try something like d4. In that case, we can take, bring the rook over. I mean, just notice the edge in development that we have. Every single one of our pieces has moved out. White, on the other hand, their queen side is very underdeveloped, and we currently have 3 pieces attacking the pawn on d4 that is pinned to the king. This knight's active. The bishop is slicing and dicing. And yeah, I mean, that pawn on d4 in this case is just a big old target. So this can lead to a very fun game for black if white ends up trying to hang on to their pawn. They can do it, but it's not recommended. Okay. On top of that, against the move c4, this move e6 is also a move that you can go with. This is the Icelandic-Palme Gambit. And yeah, I mean, it's also quite a bit of fun for black to play this kind of thing. So all that to say, against c4, you have different options. I played c6 growing up, but e6 works as well. But what else could we see there from white? What if white doesn't try to hold on to their pawn. Okay, now there's a bunch of moves here. One of them that you'll see quite a bit is knight c3. And in that case, you could play c6 with the Geschev Gambit. This move c6, as you're going to notice, I mean, this is something that is available to us all the time if we want it. Whole idea being, if you take, we're going to capture back with the knight, look to advance with, e5, bishop g4 if we see knight f3, all that kind of good stuff. But all that to say, we could also just take the pawn back. And if you look at online chess, white will usually play knight f3, play bishop e2. These are the most popular moves in online chess. I'm not saying the best moves, but the most popular. But now we play e5. We're not even down a pawn. We have great central control right now. Notice this queen cannot get kicked around by a piece at the moment. I mean, you could play c4, in which case we drop back and we're fine. But yeah, I mean, this queen, the knight can't touch it. The bishop can't touch it right now. We traded off these knights. So, you can't play knight c3 anymore because that knight doesn't exist. And, okay, we could play something like bishop f5, castle queenside, f6. We're looking at g5 and h5 options. I have, quite a bit of private students that play this line for black, and they have great success with it. And going back to knight f6, this move d4. Okay, this is a mainline move. This is very strong for white. In that case, we could play c6. Okay, this is an option here, transposing into the Godley Gambit. I believe Gotham Chess had a video covering this move. But yeah, I mean, we could take back with the knight. If knight f3, we actually have e5 here. And there's a lot of things that can happen here. Let me know if you want to see a Godley Gambit video in depth. But most players online will look at something like d takes e5. In that case, let's capture. After king takes d1, we can play knight g4. We're threatening to fork. If something like bishop e3, we could take that bishop if we want to, and then go after that pawn. If king e1, bishop c5, right? The best move white has here is arguably bishop e3, okay? Bishop b5 is also okay according to the engine. There's different moves there, but bishop e3 here is what you'll generally see. And in that case, okay, let's capture back. We're still down a pawn, but we have a huge edge in activity, right? This king has already moved, so white cannot castle. This pawn on e5 is very overextended, and we're going to be trying to attack that pawn for the rest of this game, right? Something like bishop d3, let's play bishop g4, attack the defender. I just don't see how that pawn's going to make it, guys. I just don't. So very fun game there for black. And you could also just take the pawn back, right? That's fine. You can capture back with your knight here. If you get kicked, go back to b6. It's not like knight f3. This is the best move for white, in my opinion. In that case, we can fee and kettle our bishop, look to castle kingside, look at some breaks like e5 and c5. If knight c3, I made the mistake of playing this. I remember, I was playing in Tennessee in the Super Nationals. I'm spacing on exactly which year it was, but yeah, I played the move knight c3 very quickly as white. Right, I was playing white here against my Scandinavian defense opening, and then I see the move e5, and I go, oh my gosh, I made a mistake. I should have played knight f3 first. Okay, now here white, if you push the pawn, you're weakening your dark squares. If you take, black captures, right? And we end up in a position like so. I had a very hard time defending this position, this kind of position in that game, and I ended up losing. After knight c6, white, white can play f4, that's fine. But black just keeps putting on the pressure. b3 castling queenside. This is an extremely uncomfortable position to play with as the white pieces. None of your pieces are off the first rank right now. None of them, right? Black, on the other hand, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces developed. This bishop can very easily come to a square like c5 or b4. The knights can start jumping in. I mean, let's say white plays a move like a3, right, trying to take away that b4 square. That one little mislip, and black's completely winning this position after knight d4. We're threatening a fork. We're looking at the hanging pawn. If you play rook b1 trying to stop both, guess what? Bishop f5 attacking your rook. You play rook b2 trying to save it, bishop takes a3. Yeah, this is not good for white at all. So yeah, I mean, great game there for black overall. And I would also mention too, right, after e takes d5, knight f6, there's a lot of fun lines there, as we saw, right? You can look to take the pawn back. You can play e6, c6, a lot of great stuff there. You could play c6 right away as well. This is the Blackburne-Kloosterboer Gambit. Just offering up the pawn directly. And okay, we take back. We're going to be looking to strike with e5. Against bishop b5, you see this all the time in online chess. Let's play bishop d6. We're ready to capture back. That's fine. If you want to give us the bishop pair, go ahead. And we're now going to play the key move, knight e7. There's two reasons for this. First off, we're defending c6, and we're also looking to eventually play f5 and really get some great attacking chances here on the king side of the board. Okay, so, rook e1, let's castle. We can play a move like bishop g4. If h3, we can take. right? We can play knight d4 here, forking that queen and bishop. And notice here, queen takes b7. This just doesn't get the job done, right? Because it turns out we weren't just attacking the bishop and the queen. In this case, we can't attack the queen again. It turns out we were also attacking this pawn on c2. Right, so we have a fork now, and we're completely winning this. And by the way, after rook b8, let's say white plays a move like queen e4, trying to slow it down. Fine. I mean, we'll take a piece if we must. If we must, we'll take a piece there. We're +1 in material, up in development. Great attacking chances on the king side as well, just for the heck of it. Hard to complain in a position like this. Hey y'all, I really quickly wanted to give a shout out to my friend Gwen, who owns Cosine Creative. Every single video, every single thumbnail that you see on this channel from the very start of it has been edited and designed by Cosine Creative. This also includes my entire website, our new merch line collaboration, as well as my media marketing. All of this has been done by Cosine Creative. And if you're thinking about starting a YouTube channel, maybe you already have a YouTube channel, but you're trying to take that to the next level, or you run a small business and you're trying to make your marketing stand out to bigger competitors, Cosine Creative is the place to go to make your ideas real. If you're interested in working with Cosine Creative, all you got to do, go down to the link in the description below, contact Gwen there. And I promise you that Cosine Creative does amazing professional work in a timely manner, and really just does things, at a high quality level. So all that to say, can't say enough about Cosine Creative. Let's continue with the video. Okay, we go back to that move e takes d5. So knight f6, the modern variation. This is a line that I'm very fond of. It gives a lot of fun options for black, but most go with queen takes d5, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? I mean, it makes sense, right? We play d5 with the queen defending the pawn. Okay, we capture right back. Usually in this case, you'll see a move like knight c3, and in that case, there's a few different moves you have here. First off, all of these highlighted moves we're about to look over, okay? All of the highlighted moves. You do want to be careful here. I don't think any queen move is good. For example, like queen d4, that's just bad chess, right? Your opponent here is simply going to kick your queen around, and if you go here, guess what? You get kicked around. If you go here, guess what? You're going to get kicked around again, right? So you got to be careful. But there are some moves here for black that are playable. First off, queen d6 with the Gubinsky-Melts defense. I remember I played this once in tournament chess growing up, and I lost against it. My opponent got a pretty smooth win against me. Queen d6. Notice this queen's very hard for white to kick around. I mean, sure, you can kick around with a move like knight b5, but then your knight's on b5, and it's kind of sitting there awkwardly. Knight e4, you could do it, but going to move back. If you do play a move like knight e4 there, there's a number of options that black has. Queen d5 is one of them. Just going, okay, I'm going to go back. And guess what? If you want to go, okay, I'm going to go back. You could also see black, play a move like queen e6, pinning that knight to the king. You could see a move like queen g6. I just don't think knight e4 is the best option for white there. So all that to say, if you see d4, right, there's different things black can do. Knight f6, c6. Again, this queen can't get kicked. You can attack it, but you're just going to lose your bishop. If you play g3 supporting that move, well, then you weaken your light squares. And, if something like knight e5, we can just offer a trade. We can play knight d5, attacking different pieces. This move might seem scary, knight takes f7. And it almost is. But then we just throw in a check. We just throw in a check, right? We're attacking your knight. We're checking the king. The bishop's hanging as well. If you save your knight, guess what? Thanks for the bishop. Black's completely crushing this position. So, the Gubinsky-Melts defense, very nice option for black. One that your opponent is probably not going to be very well prepared for. You could also go back to d8. Now, this used to be played all the time, historically in terms of chess games, but I feel like it kind of tapered off, and it's recently been making a comeback. Just bringing the queen back, right? Get your pawn, run back. I will be honest, I don't fully understand the appeal of it because, after d4, knight f3, it just feels like white's up a little bit in development, but black is okay here. We can play knight f6. We can play bishop g4. If you want to play h3, fine. We'll play c6 here, play e6. We're just playing solid chess. But again, it's not the funnest line, the most sharp. I don't feel like bringing that queen back to d8 really offers any kind of real threats at the moment to the white side. So that's my take on it. Let me know what you think, though. I know a lot of you guys probably really like the queen d8 move. I don't think it's a blunder. I think it's sound. Stockfish, says this is a playable game for black, but white obviously has an edge. And, we also have this move of queen e5. This is the Patzer variation. Okay, the great Carlini on the Coffee Chess YouTube channel has played this against me quite a bit. The best move white has is bishop e2, just blocking. Okay, black plays bishop g4. Notice, white can't take because it's pinned. And against d4, black is now going to take on e2, right? Whole idea being, if you take our queen, we're going to take yours. And yeah, I mean, that basically just leads to a dead even endgame. Maybe slightly better for black, just in the sense that that pawn's so far advanced. But okay, white should take back with the G knight. We now play queen a5. And from here, we're just going to develop our pieces, right? White does have an edge in development here. I think white is better. Just a quick thing, if b4, okay, if you do play the Patzer variation, don't take. Okay, this is a bad idea. You know, I'd probably look at a move, you know, maybe queen f5, maybe queen h5. There's different things you can go with there. But taking the pawn there, you know, white could play rook b1 and take the pawn. They could also play queen d3 and just keep developing. If we drop our queen back, we can see rook b1. If we save it, bishop f4. You know, there's levels to this, right? That if you're down a little bit of development, it's okay. If you're down four moves, 4 pieces in development, you only have 1 piece developed, and your opponent has 5 pieces developed, and they're 1 step away from castling. I don't know. I don't really recommend it. So okay, but okay, here we have queen a5. This is considered the main line. Okay, going to a5 again. This queen's very hard to kick around. Now you could see the move b4 here, which is considered to be the Leonhardt Gambit. Fun option for white. I will say that after queen takes b4 and something like queen d6 here, black is okay if you know what you're doing. If you know what you're doing, keyword, right? If. Let me know if you'd want to see a video on that as well. Again, I plan to make more videos on the Scandinavian defense if this video, you know, does well and gets interest, and you guys seem to be into it. I don't want to make stuff that you guys don't want to watch. So let me know if you want to see more Scandinavian defense content on all this different stuff that I'm mentioning. But okay, if a move like d4, right, this is more standard. Knight f6, right? We can play knight f6. We could play c6. We can bring our bishop out to an active square before we play e6, right? Next move, play e6. That's fine. And we're not too worried about this at the moment. I mean, if white wants to play knight d5, fine. We'll go back. We're ready to capture back with the queen, and we're just playing chess. Now going back to this move, right, of d5, white usually takes, but they don't always. There's other moves that white has available there. One of them is this move of e5. Now, I don't think this move's very good at all. It kind of reminds me of the Botvinnik-Carls defense of the Caro-Kann. Now, the Caro-Kann defense, right, we're playing c6 against the move e4, d4, d5, e5, right, the advanced variation. Here, what I recommend to my students is the Botvinnik-Carls defense. One of my private students, Adam Safer, kind of put me onto this opening, and it does very well for black. It's very hard for white to play against this. Because we're basically getting a French defense. Sure, we did use 2 moves, but we're getting a French defense with a good bishop, without the French bishop, right? Because we're going to be trying to get this bishop out before, you know, we play that move e6 in most cases. Now, you know, let's go back to the Scandinavian. If e5 here, guess what? We didn't even have to use 2 moves, guys. We didn't even have to go 1-2. We just go 1, boom. Same position, but white doesn't even have this pawn on d4. If something like knight f3, we can pin that knight. We're looking at knight c6. We're going to be putting a ton of pressure on that pawn on e5. And, you know, if c3, this is what white should do, trying to play d4. You could play d4 yourself here. This is very annoying for white to have to deal with, right? They can't even get their full pawn chain because of that pawn on d4. If they capture, we capture back. e5 is feeling very vulnerable to attack. And if a move like d4 here, which is the most popular move online, doesn't mean it's good, but it is the most popular, we can take, play knight c6 against bishop b5. Here we can play e6. I'm not too worried about this position. I mean, if white takes, we capture back. We can play something like c5, queen d7, right? This is all very popular moves from white. You know, our bishop right now, sure, right now it's not the most active, but it's not going to be hard for this bishop to activate at some point in this game. And we have a position with pawns side by side, very dangerous, wiping out half of the 4th rank. White, on the other hand, they have a pawn by itself. It's very weak. Squares like f5 and g6 could be fantastic for our knight. And yeah, I'm giving a very nice edge to black here. Not winning, but we're getting there. I'll say that. Going back to the move of d5. You could also see this move knight c3. Now, this is what I play, right? This is what I've been recommending. I'll leave a link to that video that I made on it down below, covering why I'm such a big fan of this move. A lot of players play d4. I think practically this isn't the best option for black. Stockfish might like it, but it's a very slippery slope. What I usually do is I just take on e4. By the way, you don't have to take, you don't have to push. You could play e6, you're playing a French. You could play c6, you're playing a Caro-Kann. But you could also take. And I play d3 here, which is a reversed Czech Gambit, if any of you know what the Czech Gambit is. If not, yeah, I've been working on a chessable course with one of my private students, Russ Southern. But okay, I mean, this, all that to say, the Charlotte Gambit, it's a chess opening for black. Here, as a white, we're kind of, mirroring that idea by playing the move of d3. Now, technically, in this position, it's called the Dunst Perronet Gambit with d3. But, yeah, I mean, you could take here, but it's dangerous, right? You could take, you could play e5, you could play knight f6, all that kind of stuff. But again, I usually take, and against knight takes e4, because you're hardly ever going to see t3. I like playing knight f6, right? I always have had a hard time with the bishop f5. Bishop gets chased around kind of lines. So I just offer a trade. And if you take, let's capture back with the e-pawn so that this bishop can develop very quickly. And finally, what about this move d4? This is the Blackmar Gambit. You can take, right? You don't have to take. You could play a Caro-Kann. You could play a French, which could annoy your opponent quite a bit. But you could also take. And against knight c3 and f3, you could take again. After knight takes, here's what I recommend. After you take both pawns, fianchetto the bishop, play knight c6 here, striking in the center. You're just trying to play actively here, right? We got to play actively here. We're looking towards castling king's head, but we're throwing knight c6 in first. And if you try to kick us around with d5, we have knight a5. Black here is clearly better. This bishop is attacked. b3 is attacked. If you throw in a check, let's play c6. If you capture back, we don't want to take here because we don't want to end up with the king on d8, right? So let's throw in a check. After the king moves, we can now capture back with the knight. I know this is a gambit. I know white is supposed to have attacking chances, but when we play this fianchetto, we castle kingside, we develop naturally. We look towards these, D, E, and C files. It just doesn't feel like white has much to show for that pawn. There is one other thing that I do want to mention before we outro, and that is when you play this move of d5, white might play knight f3, the Tennison Gambit. Okay, now I already have a video on this. I'll leave it down in the description below. But basically what I recommend here is taking and playing e5. And if you see d3 here, guys, don't take. Don't keep taking stuff, right? You don't gotta keep doing that. You can just keep developing your pieces in a natural fashion. And if white does capture back on e4, we do have this move of f5. That is fun, among other options. But I'll leave a link down to that video down below. Hope you enjoyed this video, the Scandinavian Defense. Ton of fun. So many different ways you can look at it. Let me know if there's any specific lines or even responses from white that you want to see a response to from the Scandinavian Defense side. And again, if you're interested in private lessons, I will leave a link to that in the description below. Peace. Thanks for watching today's video. If you enjoyed it, which I hope you did, it would mean a ton to me if you could hit that subscribe button and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss out on any other chess content coming your way. And I also wanted to give a big shout out to my Patreon supporters for the month of August in 2024, and specifically a big shout out to both Rob, who recently joined the Queen tier, and Walter, who has been a King tier patron for quite a long time. If you haven't thought about joining the Patreon community, there's some exclusive benefits that you gain by becoming a member. We're adding some benefits, and yeah, I mean, if you do decide to join, I look forward to talking to you on the platform and getting to know you better there. Thanks, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace.